Mock draft season is getting closer and closer, so I thought I'd give you guys a little mock draft. Now, there are no trades in this mock draft, so just keep that in mind, and without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so picking at number 1, we have the Chicago Bears. Now, they're not picking because they're the worst team in the league as of right now. It's because they have the Panthers pick, and they are the worst team in the league right now. And I just have a hard time seeing them passing up on a quarterback at number 1 once again. They did it last year, and they kind of probably regret it maybe, just because they see how good CJ Stroud is. And I'm not saying that they're going to pick CJ Stroud over Bryce Young, but I just have a hard time seeing them passing up on the number 1 quarterback in the draft 2 years in a row for Justin Fields. So I think they could probably trade Justin Fields for like a second round pick. I'm pretty sure that's what the Jets got for Sam Darnold. So I could see them trading Justin Fields for about a second round pick and then sticking and picking and having their pick of the quarterback. And I said back in my way too early mock draft back in like April that I think that the Caleb Williams and Drake May, they're not that far apart. Now, I do think Caleb Williams is still better. I think he's getting a little too much hate right now. He's still a great quarterback, maybe not generational like a lot of people said, including myself. But I do think he's one of the best quarterbacks since Trevor Lawrence. So I still probably believe that, even though we've seen CJ Stroud go insane in the league so far. But I still think Caleb Williams is a really good quarterback and the best quarterback prospect in this draft. So I'm going to be having the Bears take Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. And then moving on to number 2, we got the Cardinals. Kyler Murray is back, and he's been playing solid. He's not been playing great. He hasn't been playing terrible. But I can't see the Cardinals picking a quarterback here, just because Kyler Murray's contract is so untradeable. And when you have a prospect like Marvin Harrison Jr. just staring you in the face at number 2, I think you got to take it. Now, we're not doing trades in this mock draft, or else I would probably have them trading out of this spot. But if they were forced to stick and pick at number 2, I'm going to have them taking Marvin Harrison Jr. just to get Kyler Murray that solid number 1 option. And then he'll also have Marquise Hollywood Brown as his number 2 option, because I think in nowadays league you need 2 very solid options at wide receiver to really be good in the league. So I think the Cardinals would be over the moon with having Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2. Now at number 3, I mean, Mac Jones gets benched like every other week, it seems like. Bailey Zappi, he's not the answer either. So I think that the Patriots are going to be very excited to bring in a potential franchise quarterback in Drake May. Like I said, I don't think the margin is that far away from Caleb Williams and Drake May, but I do think Caleb Williams is a bit better, and I still think Drake May is a very solid option at the quarterback position. Moving on to number 4, we have the Chicago Bears picking once again, and I see them pairing up Caleb Williams, their franchise quarterback, with a franchise left tackle to protect him, and that's going to be Olu Fashanu, the tackle out of Penn State. Now, he did show that he was, not invincible during the Ohio State game, but even that was overblown. Like, yes, he got beat a couple times during that game, but he's still a blue chip left tackle prospect. He's up there with some of my favorites. Now, I am guilty of really liking Evan Neal when he came out, and as a Giants fan, you can trust me, it has not worked out. But I really think Olu Fashanu is a really, really good left tackle, and usually when you get a good left tackle, you keep them for about 10 years. You don't really see them changing teams, so I think him and Caleb Williams could be a very solid start to the rebuild. Moving on to number 5, we have the New York Giants, and this is really between 2 picks, or actually I'd say 3 picks. They could go Brock Bowers. Now they do have Darren Waller, but he is up there in age and he hasn't been that great, and obviously it's Darren Waller, so he's injured. Could also be Joe Alt, and if we do get Joe Alt, we'd probably push him over to the right tackle and have Andrew Thomas and Joe Alt on the tackle, and then maybe try to slide Evan Neal to the guard position. It's worth a try. I mean, he's not working out at tackle, so I could see that as a possibility. But ultimately, if we're going to stick with Daniel Jones at quarterback, I think we need to get him a number one receiver. And I think it's going to be between Malik Neighbors and Keon Coleman. I'm a really big Keon Coleman guy, but I just think Malik Neighbors is the pick here. I mean, the Giants could get another great LSU receiver, just like Odell Beckham. So I think it's worth the shot. Moving on to the Titans at number 6. I could see them going Brock Bowers here, but they need offensive line and defensive line help pretty badly. I'd have a hard time thinking this is not a trenches pick, whether it's on the offensive side or defensive side. And if you got Joe Alt here, I think you got to take him. I really like Joe Alt. I had him to begin the year above Olu Fashanu in my tackle rankings, but Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt are both really solid prospects, and I'd be surprised if neither one of them worked out in the NFL. So I think you can't go wrong with either or. Moving on to the Commanders at number 7. Now, this is a really good Brock Bowers spot. I see that happen all the time, though, so I don't really want to do that again. And if we're not going to go Brock Bowers, probably going to go either offensive line or defensive line. And this is where a guy like Chop Robinson, Jared Verse, Dallas Turner could come into play. Or we could go offensive tackle. And I wasn't a huge fan of J.C. Latham coming into the season, but he's really grown on me. He's really improved as a prospect. And I think he's a good fit for Washington. Moving on to number 8. I think this is where we go with a quarterback. Now, the question is, who is the third quarterback in this draft? I've seen people have Jaden Daniels. I've seen people have Michael Penix, Bo Nix, even maybe J.J. McCarthy. And I think I'm ultimately a bit higher on Michael Penix out of the 3. Now, a lot of people are going to say that's maybe a bit too rich at number 8, and I might agree with that, but who else do you have? Desmond Ridder is not the answer. He is just not the answer. Taylor Heineke, I mean, no. They could go out in free agency and get like a Ryan Tannehill, someone like that, but I really think that Arthur Smith would want to get a quarterback, and he'd probably find a way to not utilize a quarterback just like he doesn't utilize any of his first-round picks. But we are going to go with, where is he at? We are going to go with Michael Penix, the quarterback from Washington. Moving on to number 9, we've got the Green Bay Packers, and I know that they don't ever go wide receiver in the first round, but if you have Keon Coleman still on the board here, I think you got to take him. I mean, if you want Jordan Love to succeed, you got to get him some weapons. Christian Watson can't stay healthy. He just can't. Romeo Doubs is a really solid receiver, but he's not a number 1 receiver. I think the pick here has got to be Keon Coleman, and I'm a big fan of Keon Coleman. He's big, he's athletic, he's just a really good all-around receiver. Moving on to number 10, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I could easily see them going wide receiver if there was one on the board, but there's not. And I've just realized I don't think we want one defensive player in the top 10 yet. No, we've been all offense. And this is a really offensive top-heavy class, but I don't know. I'd be shocked if that's ever been done before where there's been no defensive player in the top 10. And so we're not going to make that happen. We're actually going to take Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama. Joe Shrilinka, or however you pronounce his name, he hasn't worked out. I think that they need defensive help, and I think Dallas Turner can provide that. Moving on to number 11, we got the New York Jets, and I think this is very obviously a tackle. I mean, especially if Aaron Rodgers decides to come back this year, I mean, you need to protect that guy. I mean, he's getting up there in age. He's not as mobile. So I think getting him a tackle to help protect him is the best option. Now, the 2 really good tackles are off the board, but I am still a really big fan of a guy by the name of Amarius Mims. He's been injured a little bit this season, but he did just come back, and he's looked solid. I really like him. I think he's going to have a strong kind of draft process, and he's going to rise up a lot of people's boards. Moving on to number 12, we got the Chargers. And I think the Chargers would be jumping up and down if they still had Brock Bowers on the board. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, why is Brock Bowers sliding to 12? Good players slide in the draft. It just happens. It's the way it goes. And I don't think they think twice. I think they take Brock Bowers in a heartbeat just to get Justin Herbert another weapon to utilize, because the weapon they drafted last year doesn't seem like he's working out in Quentin Johnston. Moving on to the Rams at number 13. Now, I think this is a defensive pick. They really have no one on that defense besides Aaron Donald. And I think this could be a Laiatu Latu pick. Now, I think Laiatu Latu is probably the best defensive player in the draft. But as you know, he's had a pretty wild injury history. He had to medically retire back when he played at Washington. And he had to get cleared by a whole other team because Washington wouldn't even clear him. So it's going to be interesting to see his medicals coming through the draft process and whether teams are going to be a little skeptical about drafting a guy like that. But if his medicals check out, he could be a lot higher than number 13. But I'm going to have the Rams picking him at number 13. Moving on to the Raiders at number 14. This could be a quarterback position. I don't know if they want to pick QB4 at pick 14. I don't think there's a solid option. I mean, you can go Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels if you're that high on Jaden Daniels. I'm not really there yet at pick 14. That seems a bit rich. But they need help in that secondary. And a guy like Nate Wiggins has been playing really solid. He's been kind of like that riser who not many people were talking about during the summer, but he just played himself into the first round and even to the first half of the first round. So I'm going to take Nate Wiggins here. Moving on to number 15. I mean, it's just like a match made in heaven. Getting Anthony Richardson another option. You already have that big kind of physical receiver, Michael Pittman. You have that small shifty receiver in Josh Downs. And just getting that separator who can go up and, snag the ball out of the air, create separation is just, a match made in heaven for the Colts. I think Rome Odunze is an obvious pick here. Moving on to number 16. I could also see the Broncos going receiver here, but with Rome Odunze being taken off the board, I don't really see a receiver worth taking at pick 16 at least. So I think they could also go edge rusher here. And I'm a big fan of Jared Verse. He's been slipping out of people's big boards just because he hasn't been that productive this year. And I think that's got a lot to do with his weight. He gained a bit of weight this year to kind of just figure out what his best playing weight is. And I don't think it's this weight. I believe he's like 160 maybe. 260. I think his playing weight's more around that 150 range like it was last year. I just think he's a way more explosive player when he's playing at that 150, 155 range. So if he cuts down a bit back to that last year's weight, I think he could be a monster. And I think he'd be perfect for the Broncos. Moving on to number 17, we got the Bengals. I think this is where we go Jerzon Johnny Newton. They need help in the interior of the defensive line. Jerzon Newton is really the only interior defensive player that's worthy of being picked in the first round. But he's a really solid player. Moving on to number 18, we got the Bills. And with the Tre'Davious White injury, they're really thin at cornerback. And if you still got Kool-Aid McKinstry on the board, I think you got to take him. I feel like that's just a match made in heaven. Him and Tre'Davious White coming back from injury, playing together would be a sight to see. And that defense is going to get just that much better. Moving on to number 19, we got the Saints. Now, this could be a quarterback pick. And I think I'm leaning towards that. Now, the question is it going to be Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels? I'm higher on Bo Nix as of right now. So I think I'm going to go with Bo Nix. Moving on to the Vikings, they also need a quarterback. Kirk Cousins, ruptured his Achilles tendon. Josh Dobbs looked like a franchise quarterback somehow, but he's really just a very high-end backup quarterback, in my opinion. Or maybe a bridge quarterback for a team, but I think the Vikings are going to want to get their franchise quarterback just because I don't think they want Justin Jefferson, playing with a mediocre quarterback for too long and then have him be upset and request a trade. So I think the sooner they get a quarterback, the better. And why not pair up an LSU quarterback with an LSU receiver? They didn't play together, but I think it's still cool. Moving on to number 21, we got the Arizona Cardinals. Now this could be a Chop Robinson pick. I really like BJ Ujulari from last year. I think he's a really solid edge option, and pairing him up with Chop Robinson would be just a disgusting duo. Moving on to number 22, we got the Seattle Seahawks. Now they could use interior offensive line. Now the question is, do I want to pick an interior offensive lineman at 22? If I were to do that, it would probably be Graham Barton. He plays tackle. He's listed as a tackle, but I think he's probably going to be forced to slide in. Kind of like a Peter Skoronski. A little bit worse than Peter, but he just doesn't have the length to play tackle in the NFL, in my opinion. But I think if you slide him into guard, he could be a really, really good guard. And I think we're going to do that for the Seattle Seahawks. I talked myself into it. Moving on to number 23, the Steelers need defensive help really badly. Now, you could go Cooper DeJean, but I think it would be really cool to pair up Joey Porter and Kalen King, Penn State cornerbacks in the NFL. That'd be sick. So I think we're going to do that just because it'd be cool. I do think Cooper DeJean is a bit of a better cornerback prospect. Moving on to number 24, we got the Texans. This is the Browns pick. And we're going to probably look to go defense. And I think Cooper DeJean would be a really solid pick. He could play either slot corner, or you can try him on the outside too. Cooper DeJean is just a really versatile and smart guy. I mean, you can play him in the slot corner, outside corner, which is what he typically plays. You can play him at safety. He's just a really instinctive player. He's really athletic. I mean, he returns punts. So, I think we're going to go Cooper DeJean to the Texans, pair him up with Derek Stingley. Moving on to number 25, we got the Dolphins. And I think this could be an offensive line pick. I mean, Teron Armstead, he's good, but he can just never stay on the field. He's always injured, it seems like. And if you got Talise Fuaga, who he's kind of grown on me a bit. I wasn't a huge fan of him when I first checked him out, but I think that he's probably the best offensive lineman still on the board. And I don't think the Dolphins can afford to not go offensive line. So we're going to go with Talise Fuaga. Moving on to number 26, we got the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you could probably go with like a guy like Cameron Kinchins, a ball hawk, and just have an absolutely, dynamic defensive back room with Trayvon Diggs once he comes back from injury. Teron or Deron Bland? But he's a pick six machine. I mean, pairing him with Cameron Kinchins would be really, really fun. But I think Tyler Nubin's the better prospect, in my opinion. He's really just a smart, instinctive player. I think he'd be the smarter pick. So we're going to go with Tyler Nubin for the Cowboys. Moving on to number 27, we got the San Francisco 49ers. And I mean, they've got a great team. They're kind of playing with house money right now. They could go a number of different directions, and I would like it. But I could see them going cornerback. Now, Cooper DeJean would have been a fun pick for the 49ers, but he is not on the board. So we're going to go with another cornerback that I really like. And his name is Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. Moving on to number 28, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Trevor Lawrence needs some help on the front line. I mean, he's doing what he can, but he gets pressured almost every play, it seems like. So, we probably are going to have to go offensive line for the Jaguars. You could also go receiver. I like that too, but I really like Jordan Morgan. I think he could sneak into the back end of the first round, but I could also see him falling out of the first round. I think he's the best tackle on the board. I'm not a huge fan of Patrick Paul or really Troy Fatanu, so I'm going to go with Jordan Morgan for the Jaguars. Moving on to number 29, I really think you need to get Lamar Jackson some help. Odell Beckham was a one-year deal. Rashad Bateman, I think, might be up for a contract. And then you got Zay Flowers. So, I think this could be a receiver pick. Now, do you go with Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Legette, I really like Troy Franklin out of Oregon, but I have a hard time seeing him go in the first round, even though I think he's talented enough to do so. But I think we're going to go with Xavier Legette or Emeka Egbuka. I think if you're looking to replace Odell Beckham, Emeka Egbuka would be the pick. And I think he deserves to go around this range. I think he is a first round pick for sure. Xavier Legette's more of a risky pick in my opinion. Moving on to the Lions. I think we could go with a cornerback. Now, I'm a big fan of, where is he at? TJ Tampa. He's just a big cornerback. And I'm a big fan of him. So we're going to go with TJ Tampa. He could easily not be a first round pick, but I'm a pretty big fan of him. So we're going to go with TJ Tampa. Moving on to the Chiefs at 31. I think this has got to be a receiver pick. After seeing what they did against the Eagles on Monday Night Football, I mean, they need a receiver. Patrick Mahomes needs some help. And I think Xavier Legette's the pick. He's just a really fast, physical receiver. And I think him and Rashee Rice would be a really good pairing. And then picking at number 32, which means they won the Super Bowl, is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we know what the Eagles' philosophy is when it comes to the draft. They draft either defensive line or offensive line. They do that every single year. I just can't imagine them doing it again. I mean, they're stacked at both of those. It could be Braylon Trace. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but Kevin Byard, who they just picked up, is, up there in age. Reed Blankenship is fine, but I think Cameron Kinchens would be a really, really fun guy to add to that Eagles defense. So we're going to go with Cameron Kinchens at number 32. So yeah, that's the draft. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It really helps out the channel a lot. And we're on our way to 1,000 subscribers. So please help me reach that goal. And as always, this is the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.